Hi guys, karibuni tena kwenye tuongee na Kilonzi. And I recently did an interview or a chat with Jared and Jordan. That is from the Reason to Doubt YouTube channel. So I'll be putting a link in the description. And after this, please go check out. I'm putting another link to another one of their videos. It's on the Trinity. So they explain the Trinity, the history of the Trinity, how the Trinity came to be. And they did a really good job. So, actually, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, go there, pick some information on what they say, because I know, Maze, you may need it in your ministry. Or you else, if you're interested in how the Trinity came along, the development of the doctrine, you can go to that video after this one. But watch what we had to say.
What's up, guys and skeptics? Welcome to another episode of Reason to Doubt, your source for all things skeptical. I'm your host, Jared. With me is I'm Jordan. I'm not Jared. I swear I know my name. With me is Jared. How's it going, Jared?
It's going well. I do know who I am. I'm Jared. So,
yeah. Today's very special episode, we have ADL here, all the way from Kenya, and he's a fellow atheist over there. We thought it might be cool to see how atheism is viewed across the globe. So, how's it going, my friend?
Everything is going well. Thanks for inviting me to your platform. It's a real pleasure talking to fellow atheists and skeptics around the world, and especially from the US. So yeah, I'm from Kenya. I think I'm the only one who doesn't have a J in the name.
Yeah, that's true. So tell us about yourself. What's your story?
So I practically was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So yeah, I came from that high control group. So was born and raised in until about it was I think 2019. That's when you see, as a Jehovah's Witness, I always had a question like, is this thing really the truth? Because they call themselves the truth. They claim to have the truth. So you always have that at the back of your mind. Is this really the truth? And you know, as you go preaching, you see how people are reacting to your message. And you're wondering, do I also have the same blind spots that I can see these people have? Because, for example, like one thing Jehovah's Witnesses have, they don't believe in the Trinity. So you see, I could see clearly from the Bible, like something like the Trinity, it's not real. Like, let's say Jesus asking, let's say when Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? So you're trying to reason with someone, but they can't seem to get it. Sorry?
It's like he was talking to himself.
Yeah. So you see, I was wondering, do I also have these same cognitive biases or spots? And how do I really know this is the truth? So this was kind of always at the back of my mind. And then what happened was that I started getting interested to know, what do atheists actually believe? So that's what led me down the rabbit hole. I think I fell. What happened was I watched one video. It was a short series on YouTube called Messed Up Bible Stories. So they actually kind of make fun of Adam and Eve. So it led me curious. What do atheists actually believe? What would I say if I meet an atheist while preaching? So that led me down the rabbit hole. I found Dark Matter's videos. And you see, that time I still believed in the Bible. The Bible was my basis of truth. And Dark Matter quotes the Bible a lot. And I think I watched some of his videos. Most of them I could rebut with my Jehovah's Witness apologetics. But then I think when I reached the Noah's flood video, that kind of took me out, because there were a lot of things he raised, and I was like, yeah, these points are credible, but I can't rebut it. And you know, as a Jehovah's Witness, I believe that the flood actually happened. To them, it actually happened, and it was a global flood, not a local flood. So I remember thinking to myself, oh, was it that it was a local flood and all this? You know, you're trying to wrap your head around, trying to make it make sense. But then from there, I think I decided to see if there was a Jehovah's Witness who was a Jehovah's Witness, but now is currently an atheist. and I landed on Telltale's channel. That's he's a YouTuber. He covers cults and all that.
Mhm.
So after finding Telltale's channel, I remember he talked about how he was a Jehovah's Witness, and he said that what gave him courage to research about the Jehovah's Witnesses was he read Deuteronomy 18:22, which says if a person speaks in the name of the Lord, if a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord and that word does not come true, then you know that he was not sent by the Lord. He spoke presumptuously. So I think that kind of struck me because I still believed in the Bible back then. But then I knew Jehovah's Witnesses had made a couple of false predictions about 1914, but they had tried to explain it out. But I said that now this was the Bible giving me authority to go and research my own religion, if you may. And you know, one thing with Jehovah's Witnesses, they are so against apostates. That's people who've left the religion. They are literally told not to dare listen to them, not to dare watch anything. If you land on an apostate website accidentally, as a Jehovah's Witness, you're supposed to click it off. Don't look at any material. Don't think about it.
Which
So I
that's
decided,
always a good sign when someone's like, "Hey, don't listen to anyone who disagrees with us." That's always a good sign that they got the truth right there.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you see, the funny thing is, now that you brought that up, in Kenya, most people think Jehovah's Witnesses are devil worshippers. Some people think that, and this is because their pastors have told them not to listen to Jehovah's Witnesses because they know Jehovah's Witnesses will raise some points, like let's say the Trinity, which when somebody looks at it, they won't be able to rebut it. So, and you see, it's the same thing. So that is kind of also what made me. I was thinking, yeah, these people use this technique to prevent people from listening to us, and we are also using the same technique to prevent um, us accessing message from the so-called apostates. So I think now that gave me courage to be able to look at now what they would call apostate material from people who'd left. You see, for me, when I was watching Telltale's channel, he wasn't really an apostate because he's an atheist. They kind of frame it such that apostates are people who know God, but they are deliberately trying to mislead you. So I decided, let me watch, and I remember deciding to read this. I during, let's say, during a previous episodes, you see, the thing is, I always had episodes when I was trying to see, is this really the truth? But then you try to enter into apostate material, but then you feel, okay, I can't do this anymore. So during previous episode, I had learned about a person who left the governing body. This is the highest level you can reach as a Jehovah's Witness. They're the guys who make the rules. Basically, they have a direct communication to God because they decide the policies and everything. So he left and wrote a book called Crisis of Conscience. And I decided now I can read this book. So I went, searched through the internet, got the book, and started reading.
That was a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah, surely
Yeah.
it was a mistake because slowly by slowly, I remember reading and learning things, and I was like, wait, these things actually happened. And you see, most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know some of the historical things that the organization taught, and some of the things they taught and what they believed back then. So this book actually dives deep into it. And I remember after reading, I was like, okay, now it's like my whole foundation had crumbled. I didn't know where to begin. I still, back then, I still kind of believed in the Bible. But now I was at a place where I know Jehovah's Witnesses is not the truth, is not the true religion. So where do I go from here? It was kind of having the rug pulled from underneath your feet. So I remember now from there, I was like, okay, since as a Jehovah's Witness, I had also read the Bible cover to cover, I decided, let me now, and I had some questions. And I think during this process, as I'm reading about the Jehovah's Witnesses, some questions that I had they start coming back to my mind. I'm like, yeah, and I remember this part in the Bible. Is this really the God that, you're taught God is a God of love, but there's some passages I remembered, like let's say, okay, I can't remember exactly where, but like the Bible does say that, let's say if you are to rape a virgin, you'd only pay 50 shekels to the father and marry her. So some
Then it's totally fine. Then you're good.
yeah, it's totally fine. And I'm like, that's a major loophole to give to people. I mean,
Right.
so
Yeah.
Not to mention, like, the Amalekites kill every
yeah,
man, woman, and children, everything that breathes. Like, that doesn't seem very cool.
yeah. And also when I remember, like, when they went to there's a time I can't remember who they fought, but Moses commanded his army generals so they can go kill everyone, but they can keep the virgins for themselves. And I remember thinking, this is kinda, why would God do this? But it just pushed it to the back of my mind. So all these things are now bubbling up, and I decided now from there I was like watching atheist and Christian debates. Like that was my when I leave my formal work, come home, watch atheist and Christian debates. When at work, sometimes I would put it on as a podcast at the background, and it was over and over and over and over. And then I think from there now I landed on watching Atheist Experience. So I watched episodes on episodes on episodes of Atheist Experience. And I think finally I realized, yeah, the atheists are winning on these arguments on each and every front. Now, I had to now start learning other things, like let's say things like evolution. How does evolution work? Because you see, as a Jehovah's Witness, we had been given a straw man of evolution. They claim, evolution is like claiming that a whirlwind just passes through a garbage yard and assembles a Boeing 747 out of
Yeah.
nothing. So yeah, that's exactly. So now I had to learn what is evolution, what technically do we mean by evolution, and now finding out that evolution actually is something that we have seen, we have tested, we have observed. And I think for them, they try mixing evolution and abiogenesis to try and make their point stronger. So realizing abiogenesis, sorry, is something totally different from evolution. I think now I had like to relearn things. Where do I get my morals from? What do I know? What is moral? What is right? What is wrong? How do atheists navigate through all this?
So at this point, had you deconverted, or were you still kind of figuring it out?
At this point, that's still in 2019. I think I started my journey at around, it was around May. So by this time we're around August, and I'm still trying to figure things out. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I was still trying to come to accept that now I am indeed turning into an atheist, because slowly by slowly I was now turning into an atheist, but I wasn't still comfortable wearing that title that I am an atheist by then. So I remember, but then during all this, as things are going on, I am still in the church, in the Jehovah's Witness church. I am there, like I go to church, I do everything. At that level, I was in the Jehovah's Witness hierarchy. Once you're a baptized male, then you can become what they call a ministerial servant. So that's the first step. Then the next step is becoming an elder. So I was a ministerial servant. That meant that I could give sermons in church, maybe uh, on Sundays, maybe in like twice a year. And they usually have other midweek meetings. Those ones you'll get frequent sermons because they're usually short parts. So, and on Sunday, it also means that I could chair the meeting. Chairing just involves you introducing the speaker for that day and giving the prayer for that, ushering in the first song and giving and praying. So I remember I was, since at that time we were meeting, our congregation had been split into two. So we had a shortage of people to do such things. So I would find myself like most of the Sundays I'd be the one sharing and praying. So I would stand up there and I'm like, do these people know I'm questioning everything right now?
Yeah.
That's so like
As I pray.
it's funny. Jared had a similar kind of experience because I don't know. We've shared our deconversion story, but in brief, like I was a young Earth creationist and I followed kind of a very similar journey to you. But Jared was you were in seminary, like
Yeah.
you were about to become a pastor. You know, yeah,
Yeah, very
And how
similar
did it
story.
go?
yeah. So that's interesting that you were like on Sunday giving like preaching and then privately wondering if anything you were talking about was true.
Yeah. And I remember like praying. I remember this particular time I was just told, just come chair. And I'm there praying. I'm saying all the right things that you should say. But I remember being like, you see, previously I would pray and you'd feel it because it's like I would pray and I'm talking to someone, but this time I'm saying everything right. And I'm like, you mean you can just do this thing mechanically without, and it's still going out, but I'm like, do these people know I'm even questioning whether this prayer is really going anywhere? You when you're a Christian, you believe it's going to God in heaven. I'm like, do these people really know I'm questioning right now? This prayer is not leaving this room we are in.
Right.
Yeah.
Which there's a do you remember the name of what's that project where it's helping like pastors and whatnot?
Freedom from religion.
Yeah, they have a project specifically to help preachers, but it makes me wonder like how many people are up there giving sermons like that not believing, but they're just, going through the motions. Like how would you even know?
Yeah, especially with a lot of those because they're so tied into like their family structure, their financial systems. Like they can't just say, "Oh, I don't believe this anymore." Now you have no job to fall back on, right? So you have to continue to go through the services. Yeah.
So you're going through this process, deconversion and questioning. Like, what was the watershed moment where you decided, I'm done?
So I think for me, what happened was, you see, it was hard to continue because it reached a point I was like, okay, now I totally don't believe. But you see, they still expect me to do something. So I wrote a letter to them telling them I want to step down from being a ministerial servant. But still, I wanted to remain a Jehovah's Witness to avoid getting shunned.
Mm.
Because with them, once you leave, they start shunning you. And so I decided, let me first stop being a ministerial servant, then just continue going with the flow. Or I wanted to do what they call a fade. That is just get out and stop attending the meetings. But you see, for me, it was kind of rather suddenly because I decided, let me stop, let me write the letter. But then the elders were taking time before responding to my letter. And you see, before they respond, I'm still expected to carry out certain duties. So what I did was actually started growing a beard. Jehovah's Witnesses hate beards. So I started growing a beard, and immediately the beard started getting noticeable. The elders now called me in. Tell them I want to stay.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's when I told them I want to step down, and they started questioning me a bit, asking me, we've seen you growing beard. I told them, yeah, I don't see what the problem is. The Bible does not condemn beards and everything, but they're like, no, but our faithful and discreet slave, that's how they call the leadership. The faithful and discreet slave says that we should do this and this and this. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm following the Bible. You see, we are following the Bible. We're not supposed to follow men. And for them, they don't. It didn't sit well with them, but they were like, okay. Then I started posting a few things, not really explicit, but it was kind of revealing. So at this time, what also happened is, now my dad was in, and he would go, and I started telling. I had asked my dad the beard question, and I also started asking him a few things. But then now when he realized I'm growing a beard, and then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to the Kingdom Hall or the church. That's what they call the church. I'm not going to the Kingdom Hall anymore. So I'm not going for their meetings. And my dad was like, okay, now what's going on? So I told him, listen, I'll tell you everything as it is. So I told him everything from A to Z. And I think what really scared him was that he learned that I had read apostate material.
Mm.
As I told you, they are really afraid. So he quickly, now seeing that I'm in spiritual danger, went to the elders and told them about it. So the elders quickly now summoned me because apostasy is a big thing. They called me in for a judicial hearing. A judicial hearing in the Jehovah's Witness. So you sit down with three elders. So from there, they also tried to put another charge that I had siphoned funds from the congregation. This is in like October. This is in like December, and I stopped attending their meetings in October. So I had already stepped down, and you're like, okay, at what time did I steal these funds? But they were looking for something to make sure that they kick me out, because now they had seen some of my posts that were a bit controversial, and they're afraid of apostasy, so they had to make sure that I left. So from there I was like, okay, it's okay. They decided to, they call it disfellowshipping, but it's the same thing whether you're disfellowshipped or whether you disassociate. So it was then announced that I'm no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and the official shunning now began. Now, once that was done, I was like, the damage is already done. There's no going back. So now I was able now to come out and start talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. This is still in 2019, 2020, but now I started posting on my social media, posting things about the Jehovah's Witnesses, and most people started unfollowing me when they noticed that, because now they knew I had gone full apostate, and to them it's a scary thing. So that's how I left and now started talking actively against Jehovah's Witnesses.
I mean, I've been watching some of your channel on YouTube and stuff. I'm really struck by your story.
Which, if this is going to be released on both channels, if you're watching us on our channel, we'll make sure to have a link to his channel in the description, so you can go check out his stuff. It's great.
Definitely recommend it. One of the things you had mentioned in your atheist misconceptions video was that you wanted people to become skeptics and not necessarily atheists, and that was really important to you. And it seems like you have a very skeptical mindset. Like, have you always had that kind of skeptical mindset, or was that something that you maybe like found later? Because when I hear your story, like how you had questions and stuff all along, you've approached it from a very good skeptical point. So like, where did that come from for you, do you think?
I tend to think that I've always been skeptical. The only thing is, I wasn't that skeptical about the religion because I was indoctrinated as a child.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, I always had this, as I said, I always had questions, because you see, being raised a Jehovah's Witness, you're taught you have the truth. But the question is, you wonder, how come I can see the truth and everyone else cannot see this truth that I am seeing? So it made me really, I think I was a skeptic in that way, that I was always wondering, is this really the truth? And I also tend to, I think from my young age, I used to enjoy science. Actually, science was one of my favorite subjects. But you find that in Kenya also, when you're taught things like science, you see, in Kenya, we are taught creationism side by side with things like evolution. That is at the secondary level. We have, I'd call it something like junior high. So they are taught side by side. So you'll find that for me, I used to enjoy science, but then when I reached at that level, I think what happened for me, I dropped biology. But when you're studying things like history, you'll find that even in history, you're taught that there is, and they put them both at equal level, that the origin of man can be explained by two theories: the evolution theory and the creation theory, and they're put side by side as if they are one thing. So
gotta teach that controversy, man.
In Kenya, it is in Kenya. You see, and that's why I think I'm pushing for people here in Kenya to realize that one, like, evolution is credible, and how things are taught. You find that in Kenya, people ask exactly those questions that I hear, like, okay, if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? And that shows that clearly this person does not understand this concept. And that's where I also was. So, yeah, but I think to answer your question, I've always been skeptical.
Yeah, that's really important to us too, and I think it's something that the term skeptic, I think, is scary for a lot of religious people, because I think it's synonymous in their mind with atheist, but all it just means is somebody's like questioning, right? Someone who just wants the truth, and shouldn't we all want the truth? Uh,
Yeah.
It also, what you said resonated with, like, you get, how is it that I'm the only one who can see the truth? Like, isn't it? Aren't I so lucky that I happen to be born into the true religion?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the odds?
Mm.
So once you deconverted, and I guess more broadly, how is atheism viewed in your country? Like, how are atheists treated there?
So in Kenya, there aren't that many atheists. Most atheists live in the shadow. They know they are atheists, but they don't speak out or talk about their atheism. They don't put it out there. But you'll find that for some people, they think, like the deeply religious people, they tend to think that atheists are devil worshippers also, or they are Satan's agents. So it does depend also on on which area of Kenya you come from. Like, at least in urban areas, people have a bit more tolerance and understand atheists more. But the more you go to the rural areas, you'll find that people think atheists are devil worshippers. People are really afraid of atheists. But I'm finding that slowly by slowly, the tide is turning. The more atheists are putting content out there and talking, you find that at least people are starting to accept that we are atheists, but they still have a lot of misconceptions on atheism, what atheism means, what exactly it entails. Some people think atheism is also like another religion.
Mm-hmm.
They don't realize it's just simply not being convinced that a God exists.
Yeah, I think for me, like when I first came out, I struggled to find a community. Like I didn't know too many atheists or whatever, and so most of my connections with atheists were online, similar to this. Have you been able to connect with any other atheists, in your area that you've been able to form a community with, or is it mostly online?
So mostly it's online. Though I have met atheists. At least now, what I did was also I went to, there's a group called Atheists in Kenya. It's a society, but I used it as a platform now to meet with other atheists, and I also know a couple of people who are non-religious, same atheists, and they are also atheists. Some refer to themselves as agnostics, who are also Jehovah's Witnesses. And now at least we have a small community of people who are ex Jehovah's Witnesses. Some are atheists in that community. Some are still believe. Some are still Christian. But I think that was one of the greatest achievement, was forming a group of first ex Jehovah's Witnesses, because we came from a cult, which is kind of different from coming out from one of the mainstream religion, whereby they don't really shun you and you can continue talking to your friends. But in the Jehovah's Witnesses culture, you're cut off completely.
Yeah, that's got to make it tough. Like I my fallout had been for other reasons already. So like that bridge was already burned by the time I was having doubts. So that wasn't an obstacle to me. But I imagine that if you're like struggling with doubt and you decide that you don't believe, like you need to be pretty sure, like confident in what you're thinking. Cause if you bring your authentic self, that's got to be really tough, knowing that if I do this, I'm going to basically lose the the community I grew up with, everyone I'm attached to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least but the good thing for me is that I had friends who are also not Jehovah's Witnesses, which is something that they usually frown upon. Don't be too close to people who are unbelievers. But I had friends out there, so it also helped with the transition. And now finding guys who have left the Jehovah's Witness religion, we formed a small community, and now also meeting fellow atheists later. It did help me now at least find a footing and find a community.
I was wondering, like, I'll drive around and I'll see, a Kingdom Hall here or there, and I'm like, how prevalent is Jehovah's Witness? Like, just in my general area, but how prevalent is the Jehovah's Witness religion, where you are versus, 'cause it seems like wherever I go, there's a Kingdom Hall, no matter where in the world. So,
so here in Kenya, the thing with Jehovah's Witnesses, what makes them look that prominent is that instead of building one huge church to cover a whole big area, they prefer building small kingdom halls that contain about 100 people, 100 to 200 people, congregants. So that's it. So it seems so prominent. But in Nairobi, I know they were about, the last time they had a convention, an international convention, and the region was in Nairobi. They were about 33,000 in attendance.
wow.
That's 33,000. So they do have a presence, and you see the fact that they go preaching also makes them look so prominent. But worldwide, their membership, I think, is about 8.5 million.
And it's always struck me too. I think, isn't Jehovah's Witness like there's a limit on how many people actually get into heaven? Like, so like, it's kind of always struck me like there's only like 250,000 are going to make it. So I guess, how do you know you're the one?
So for them, they have this, you can call it a two-tier Christianity. So they believe that 144,000 people will get into heaven. So they are going to heaven to rule as kings and priests. The majority of mankind and the rest of the Jehovah's Witnesses will be here on earth. So for them, they will be down here on earth. They will be the subjects of those who are ruling from heaven.
So I guess you're just lucky if you're one of the 140 some thousand. Yeah.
I guess you got to roll the dice. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying their leadership all believe that they are made up of those few 144,000 who will go to heaven.
Yeah, got to climb to the top, I guess. I thought it was really interesting. I've been going through some of your videos, answering questions you receive, and it was fascinating to me that like this video could have been made anywhere in the world. Like the exact same objections, the whirlwinds assembling an airplane one, get that all the time. Probably the single most common objection I get or question or whatever is they'll say, well, you're an atheist because you just want to sin. Like, that's why you're an atheist, because you don't want to be held accountable. Which it's like, well, I don't believe sin is real. So, so what would you say, like, if you introduce yourself as an atheist in Kenya, like, what is the response you usually get?
So I think the first thing people are like, are you serious? Are you real? I mean, you don't believe in God? You don't believe in God? You don't believe? Okay. Do you believe in anything? Is there anything you believe in? What do you believe in? Because I think to them, they feel like once you remove God, there's such a huge hole you've removed. So, okay, what do you believe in? How can you not believe in God? But how can you not believe in God? There is a God. There should be a God. How can you say you don't believe in God? I think that's the most typical reaction. Then now guys start asking questions. Okay, what do you believe in? Okay, I think what do you believe in is the next question that they usually, what do you believe in? And hence is usually like, I believe in many other things, just not a God. But I believe in many other things. I believe in people should get educated. I believe in human rights. There's so many other things I believe in. There's only one thing that you believe in and I don't believe in. That's a God. From there, it's free game. Sorry.
Yes, it's because once you become an atheist, you're obviously a nihilist too, where nothing matters anymore, right?
Obviously.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another one that's extremely popular here. Is like, well, if you don't think that, like, because if you're an atheist, you think when you die, that's it, it's over. So like nothing matters in 1,000 years. It's not going to matter. Like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, in 1,000 years, but like it matters right now. You know.
Yeah, it does matter. Right now, we are still alive. Provided we are still here, it does matter what we do and everything else. So, yeah, I think people tend to think that once you'll sink into nihilism or nihilism. I don't know how you pronounce it. So they tend to think that you'll sink deep into that and be like, okay, nothing really matters after, or like now you'll find somebody asking you, okay, so why don't you just go kill someone? Like it doesn't matter if there is no God, you can kill someone and it will be okay.
I
And
I was just thinking, like, that's literally exactly where my mind went, because
yeah,
they're like, "Well, what's stopping you from killing someone?" It's like, "Well, I don't want to." Like, why would you want to?
yeah, exactly. Uh,
Yeah.
Whenever someone asks me that, or I've heard a variant where it's like, "Well, if I was an atheist, I would just go like rob a bank or do whatever awful thing." It's like, is literally the only thing that's stopping you from being a horrible person is thinking that there's someone watching. Like, that's not great, Like, it seems to me you should not rob banks or kill people because it's the right thing to do,
yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry,
No, go ahead.
I
That's
think
fine.
Jared was saying something.
No, I was just laughing at that. Yeah.
And I think I and the funny thing is, I think I kind of get where some of them are coming from because I also was once there. Like you're thinking, if I didn't believe God is real, why would I stop from doing some of these things? But then you realize, okay, I'm actually a good human being. I'm not a shitty person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I,
Mm.
yeah, I think when you get down to it, and if you can get into a discussion, you tend to agree a lot more than you disagree. Like,
Mhm.
we may not agree that God told us to kill, but we both agree you shouldn't kill people, you shouldn't hurt people, you shouldn't lie. Like there's all kinds of common ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me about your story was you talked about after you deconverted, you started to look at other aspects of your life. So you started looking at morality and things like that. Was there anything that surprised you when you were kind of doing that internal, search and like finding truth? Like, what do you believe now?
I think for me, so okay, so there's some things that now I had to let go of, and some things I had to change. Because you see, I had been brought up as a Jehovah's Witness with the Jehovah's Witness view of morality. Like now, I had now to think. Let's say if I get to a situation where I need a blood transfusion, why would you see for them they as a Jehovah's Witness I couldn't get a blood transfusion for whatever reason. So now I'm like, yeah, I think I like my life, and if that's what's gonna save it, I'll need to get a blood transfusion. The other thing, things like I think a big one for me was letting go or starting to build my mind around things because I can say I was a homophobe where it was because this year as a Jehovah's Witness, you're told that this is wrong. Marriage is between a man and a woman.
Mhm.
They're very homophobic, and I think if you have seen any of the ex Jehovah's Witness who cover their aspect on homophobia, it's really intense. Now, the worst part is that in Kenya, homophobia is so real. People are really homophobic in Kenya. So it had to take a lot for me to stop thinking in terms of homophobic thoughts and realize no, everyone has a choice. Actually, it's not a choice
Mhm.
when it comes to being born gay or being born lesbian, being born bi, being born. it's not a choice that they made. It's something that people are born that way, and we have to accept them as they are, because the only thing, and you see now that framework that, because you see in this, as a Jehovah's Witness, it was wrong because God says so, God is the final word on this. But now I have to think, okay, what makes this thing wrong? What makes it right? Is it like now when it comes to someone who's a homosexual, is it wrong for them to be a homosexual? What exactly is making it wrong? If I was to say it's wrong, what exactly is making it wrong? And when I come from that point, you realize, okay, there's nothing wrong with with your sexual orientation. Sorry, there's nothing wrong with your sexual orientation. So I think that is one thing that I had to work really, really hard to overcome. And I think up to date, it's something that I can say it's still ongoing. That I'm trying to, like, let's say, even in Kenya, when you go to Kenyan Twitter, when such matters are being discussed, you'll realize guys are really hateful on the community, on the LGBTQ community. Guys are really hateful. And I go sometimes and try to strike up a conversation, and you'll find that most people, when you ask them, okay, so what's wrong? What's really wrong? It will always go back to the Bible. Okay, why should we believe the Bible? And they're like, but you see, God tells us this and this and this. So I think that's one thing that has been so ingrained in people, and myself particularly. And it was so hard to change my thought patterns when it comes to such things.
Yeah, I think that's a common experience. When I was Christian, yeah, I was fundamentalist, not Jehovah's Witness level of fundamentalist, but still fundamentalist. And I had the opinion, like, kind of like you, I had the similar thought, like, I didn't understand why it was wrong. It didn't seem like anyone was getting hurt. There's two consenting, like, I personally didn't care, but I forced myself to care because I thought the Bible said it was wrong. And so it's like, well, I have to think it's wrong because that's what God says, right? So it was very freeing for me to take that restraint off, and then I can just like look at the harm that's being done. And if there's no harm, it's no problem. My probably struggle was with transphobia, because that was another big part of my biblical upbringing, even though the Bible says literally nothing about it, whatever. So, but like, so when I deconverted, sort of same thing. I was kind of going through all of my different beliefs, and that was one of them. And I was like struggling because like I had this built up feeling, but there's nothing backing it up. And then one day, just like a light switch turned on. I was like, oh wait, hold on, that's none of my business. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did you have any questions for us or anything that you wanted to ask us while you got us on here?
Yeah. Okay, just knowing what's the experience like there now from your local area. What's it like when people hear you're atheist? Are they more accepting?
Yeah, so I live in a pretty urban, like I live in the suburbs of a small city, and we're pretty left leaning, like liberal. So like if it comes up in conversation, there's a decent chance the person I'm talking to is either an atheist or like just not terribly religious. Like it's more like, oh, okay, like nobody cares, and then just the conversation moves on. It's not a big deal for most people I just like run into in life.
Yeah, and I'd say for me, it's similar thing. Like most people kind of go, "Oh, okay," but they don't ask that question. Kind of like when you get that response, like, well, "What do you believe in?" Like, I think people are afraid to like push that here where I live, and so even family members were hesitant when I first came out to like ask questions, and they seemed like they just wanted to not even talk about it because they didn't want to acknowledge that it was happening. So,
I was fortunate in that most of my family, we didn't coordinate it or anything. It just we all kind of deconverted all at the same time, just kind of independently of each other. Like, I don't know. I looked around one year and it's like, we're all atheists now. Like we didn't, I don't know how that happened. So I was pretty fortunate there. Now I will say I know other people who live in more conservative areas of the country, and their experience is very different, much more similar to yours.
yeah.
I know a couple atheists who live in like Louisiana, and that's a very conservative Christian area. And so when they share that they're an atheist, if they do, because they don't want to be, ostracized, they get the same thing. Like, how do you not believe in a God? What's keeping you moral? But look at the trees. What about babies?
Yeah. And I know too, like I have family that live in more conservative areas. So like if I go visit them or if I'm in those areas, I just try to avoid the topic because I don't really want to get into a long debate or an argument about it, right? I'd rather just, we're humans, let's enjoy each other's company and not talk about this. So
yeah, I tend to not bring it up, not because like I'm afraid to talk about it or anything like that. It's just like I know it makes people uncomfortable sometimes, and like I don't want to force the conversation a way to make someone feel like they're uncomfortable, because if I'm with you, it's probably because I want to be around you, and that's way more important to me than what you do on Sunday. As long as you're not hurting anybody, whatever.
Yeah. And did any one of you experience family members shunning them or?
So I probably would have if I hadn't been recently divorced. So my marriage fell apart, and that caused not like official shunning. It was just kind of like everyone was like, "Oh, you're divorced," and stop speaking to me. So I think had I deconverted before I divorced, I think I would have gotten a similar response. I think it would have been sort of maybe not shunning, like we're never going to speak to you, but more we're going to speak to you with the specific purpose of saving your soul, and then not associating with you really otherwise. That's my guess. But like I said, having gone through a divorce, they'd already destroyed the bridge already. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't experience any shunning. I still in communication with my family. There are members of my family who I have not openly said that I'm an atheist to because I'm afraid of what the repercussions might be. I don't know if I would be shunned, but I think that they would maybe stop communicating with me or communicate with me in a much different manner. And I just don't want to disappoint them. That's the biggest thing. It's like I would rather we don't have to talk about it. Like, you keep believing what you want to believe, and as long as I don't disappoint you, that's fine. So
yeah. I think we're both pretty fortunate to live in the time and place that we do, because not that long ago in the States we would have had a very different experience. So I think we kind of lucked out in that way. Our journey was a lot less hard than it could have been.
Yeah, and I think too, like not coming from a very strict religion like Jehovah's Witness, where like shunning is like kind of built into the religion, so to speak, to help protect the congregation and the
yeah,
that's not really part of what I grew up in. So
my church, they didn't have like an official mechanism because it wasn't like as top down directed as the Jehovah's Witnesses are. There was the kind of general feeling that like you shouldn't be unequally yoked. You want to be in the world, not of the world, And so like there was definitely the feeling that if someone isn't Christian, you should kind of keep them at arm's length because you don't want to be tempted into sin or whatever, But it wasn't like an official thing. It would be more like if you were hanging out with a bunch of atheists all the time, people might look at you weird or like, what are you doing?
Which that always surprised me too, because that's very antithetical to like what Jesus would have done. Like Jesus would been like trying to hang out with the atheists and like
right. That's a great point. Like and your point with the beer too. Like it seems like they add a lot to the Bible, but if you just look at particularly the New Testament, Jesus was hanging out with prostitutes and tax collectors, and so yeah, it seems like if they really wanted to follow the example of the person they say they're following, they'd act a lot differently. And that's not true for all Christians. There's Christianity is a huge tapestry. Honestly, I think for me, the more liberal, like progressive Christianity resonates at least. And I'm not Christian, so maybe I'm just suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, but it resonates a lot more. So I don't know if you can hear my son yelling in the background. Sorry about that. Resonates to me a lot more as like authentic to the message of Christ, which was, well, first and foremost, the world's going to end, so repent. But also, you should love your neighbor, like that was like a big deal to him.
Yeah. I think, okay, personally, what I usually say is that with the Bible, I think you can take any stand and you can find a scripture to defend it.
Yeah, that's true. Like especially if you want to contrast the Old Testament God to the New Testament God, who seem like very different gods. You know, that was actually the early Christian heresy. I can't remember the name of it, but there were two gods in the New
Gnosticism.
Testament. When was it a feature of Gnosticism? I don't remember.
I think it was a variant of Gnosticism.
Anyway,
anyways.
Yeah. That's a good point. That the Bible being such a big book written over so many years by so many different perspectives, basically any stance you want, you can find a verse in there somewhere. Yeah,
and defend it.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Okay. The thing I just wanted to say is that I think leaving Jehovah's Witnesses is also kind of. I think when you, it's also kind of hard for someone, because for us now you find that like for me at least, okay, I know the worst part is that Jehovah's Witnesses in the US find it more tough than Jehovah's Witnesses living in Kenya, because I think in Kenya you'll find that the family unit is more strong, or the family bond. So like for me, my dad is still a Jehovah's Witness, but he doesn't shun me. He'll talk to me. I'll go visit him once in a while. But you'll find that like now extended relatives like cousins, now they'll avoid talking to me. Some of them, let me say some of them, there's some who still talk to me, but some totally avoid talking to me. So I don't know, you said your family experience at least was better, but I think also when it comes to talking religion, like I found that I think my dad and I, it reached a point we decided we're not talking religion. we'll talk any other thing. We'll talk football. We'll talk sports. We'll talk the state of the nation and things like that. How family members are doing. But when it comes to religion, we decided we're not going to talk, because I remember like one time we had a chat and it reached a point I asked him a question and he was like, cognitive dissonance was so hard on him, he decided, okay, we are not doing this anymore.
Yeah. It's usually a good thing to like not mention religion or politics at family events, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, having the relationship is the important thing, So, yeah. My family is a little weird in that we talk religion and politics all the time. We agree on a lot of it, but we disagree on a fair amount too. But yeah, your mileage may vary. Yeah. It was. Actually, my mom is way more progressive, I guess, or liberal than I am. We went to a it's kind of off topic, but we were going to a protest in support of Black Lives Matter, and my brother was like, hey, make sure you take care of yourself, make sure you drink water, be safe. And my mom was like, this is not my first protest. Like, yeah. Well, I think you answered all of the questions I had. It was super interesting hearing about your experience. It was, and I said this before, but it's really fascinating, even though you're in a very different culture, in a very different context, just how similar like the experiences are, the questions, which really shows, I think, that the kind of questions and that inquisitive nature is like just a human thing. It's not a American or Kenyan or any other kind of cultural thing. It's like a human experience, something that unites everybody. I think from this, I'm taking away the skepticism should be a universal experience that everybody can enjoy.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us, for the viewers on our channel, what you got going on coming up, what they should look out for on your channel?
So I think the next post I'm working on currently, I want to make a post on morality, because I know that's something that I really get asked a lot. So it will be a short post on morality, on how, as an atheist and as a humanist, where do we get our morality from, and is it a better grounding than the religious grounding on morality? So I think that's what I'll be doing. I also want to, because I started, the thing is, I also did another post on, I called it my weird Bible stories, but that's hard for people who are not Kenyan to follow because I do it in our local language. So it's a mixture of English and Swahili. Let me call it common Swahili that we talk in Kenya, because there is the standardized official Swahili, which is also, I think many people won't resonate or won't it won't touch their hearts as I want it to. So that's why I gave it as in the common Swahili that we talk day to day. So I called it my book of weird stories, because when I was a kid, I was read my book of Bible stories in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I'm also I'm planning another episode on that. I think I need to cover, there is this story that's similar to the Sodom story, but in the book of Judges. But in this point, this guy went with his wife, and this was within Israel. And the guys from the town came out at night and said they want to have relations with that man. But then what happened was that the person who was hosting him told these guys, just like the Sodom stories, I have daughters, you can take my daughters. And this guy also gave up his concubine. But in this case, the guys actually assaulted the concubine, and by morning she was almost dead and she died at the doorstep. So it's a fascinating Bible story. So most Christians don't actually know these stories exist in the Bible. So that's
yeah. I feel like if the Bible were any other book, it'd be banned in Christian schools.
True.
Yeah, I always had this thing like, let me teach your Sunday school to your kids. Like a fair game. I can just read out the Bible, right? Like I'm sure.
I'm only going to use biblical stories. I promise.
Kids would run screaming, right? So I did want to say, yeah, like I found your channel, your sense of humor is hilarious. Like, like the laugh tracks that you add and like the little things, like I found myself laughing quite a bit. So I really enjoyed your sense of humor and
criminally
undersubscribed. So definitely.
Yes. We're going to plug it to whoever we can. So
yeah. All right. I'll also plug a link to your channel, because I think people have heard me talk but have never seen your content. So I'll also plug a link.
Yeah. So
appreciate that. Yeah.
What we've got coming up, we're going to be wading into everyone's favorite debate, which is what's the definition of atheism and what it should be, since that's super hot right now. I'm going to be going on vacation. I'm going to go to on my honeymoon 3 years later because of COVID. So Jared's going to be running solo for a little bit. Have you decided what you're going to be doing, Jared?
Not yet. I actually want to have a conversation with with a theist. So I'm trying to find a theist that I can have a conversation with. I enjoy conversations. It really, so
it should be easy. It's like 65% of America. Just throw a stick and hit somebody.
Oh, we can get a Kenyan theist also.
There you go.
That'd be great. Cool. Yeah,
that'd actually be really neat. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks a lot for coming. It was a great time, and hopefully we'll have you on again at some point in the future.
Thanks a lot. I've also enjoyed the discussion.
Until
enjoy the rest of your day. I know your time, you're still enjoying the rest of your day.
Yeah, you guys you're about to fall asleep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, until next time, remember, you've always got reason to doubt.
Peace out.